Welcome to part 3 of World War I. The French know that Verdun is crucial. It's a symbol of French strength, and if they lose it, it would be a devastating blow to their pride and their morale. The Germans under General Erich von Falkenhayn, the French army dry. The idea is simple: to inflict so many casualties on the French that they'll be forced to surrender. They believe that France will fight to the last man to protect foreign, and they're right. The battle rages for nearly 10 months with unimaginable casualties. Every inch of land is fought over. Soldiers are so close to each other that they can smell the enemy's sweat, hear their voices, and see the terror in their eyes. The fighting is so intense that every day feels like an eternity. There are constant bombardments, and soldiers are forced to take cover in the deep, damp bunkers. The French are fighting for their homeland, and they refuse to back down. But the Germans are just as determined. Thousands of men die each day. The smell of death fills the air at the end of Verdun. The French have lost 300,000 men, and the Germans have lost nearly the same number. And for what nothing, the front lines don't move. The soldiers are no closer to victory than they were before the battle began, as the battlefields of World War I grow more brutal. The nature of warfare itself begins to change. This is no longer a war of glorious charges and bravery on horseback. This is a war of technology, of machines, and of death from a distance. The soldiers who fought in this war are no longer fighting face to face. They are fighting in trenches behind barbed wire and using weapons of mass destruction. But what's even more heartbreaking is that entire generations of men are being lost in this war. Young men, many of them still. Boys at heart are sent off to die in a foreign land, never to return home. These men are fighting not for freedom or honor, but because they've been told that it's their duty. They fight not for a cause they believe in, but because they have no choice for the families at home. The war becomes an endless wait. Mothers, wives, and children wait for letters from the front, hoping that their loved ones are still alive. They cling to every word, reading them over and over, hoping to catch some hint that their soldier is safe. But for many families, these letters stop coming. They receive only the dreaded news of death in the quiet of the night as they sit by the fire. They know that their world has changed forever. They know that the son, the husband, the brother they once knew may never come home. The war spreads new fronts open. Meanwhile, the war is spreading. Beyond Europe in 1915, the Ottoman Empire joins the Central Powers and opens up a new front in the Middle East. The Gallipoli campaign is a disastrous failure for the Allies, with thousands of men losing their lives for little gain. The Ottoman soldiers, like the European forces, fight bravely and fiercely, but the fighting in this region is just as brutal and deadly as it is in Europe and Africa. The war is fought on a different scale. Here, the Allied forces fight the Germans over colonies and territories, with native soldiers fighting in battles. They don't fully understand. They fight for countries that aren't their own, and they fight against enemies they've never met. But still they fight because war has become a reality for everyone, no matter where they are. In the World, Chapter 4. The Turning Tide of the War. As the years drag on, the war shows no sign of ending. It becomes clear that both sides are fighting not just for victory, but for survival. The war has taken on a life of its own, and each side has become more desperate to outlast the other. The fighting has become endless. It feels as though there will be no end to the suffering. The French, the British, the Germans, all of them are drained. They've lost millions of soldiers. Families have been torn apart, and there's no clear winner in sight. Imagine being in a trench facing the same enemy day after day, the same endless bombardments, the same horrifying screams, the same mounds of bodies. You begin to wonder if there's anything worth fighting for anymore. But despite all of this, the soldiers continued to fight. Not for glory, but because they must. By 1917, the situation is desperate for the Allies. The Central Powers, led by Germany, are pushing hard, and the Allied forces are running out of strength. The French soldiers have fought tirelessly for years, but they're exhausted, both physically and mentally. The British forces are also struggling, and the United States has just entered the war, bringing hope but also new challenges. It's in the year 1917 that a new sense of urgency begins to spread. The Allies know they need to win, and they need to win soon, before the Germans completely break them. The German army, too, is starting to show signs of where the soldiers are tired, they're hungry, they're starting to lose hope. The shocks of war have left their mark on everyone, and the Germans know that they are fighting on the brink of collapse. The United enters the war, then in April 1917, something incredible happens. The United States enters the war. President Woodrow Wilson declares war on Germany, and it is like a spark that ignites a wildfire. The American soldiers bring a fresh energy, new resources, and a massive supply of men to the battle. Suddenly, the Allies have a new force behind them, and the Germans realize they are facing an enemy they cannot defeat alone. The arrival of the United States is like a breath of life for the Allies. The soldiers who have fought for so long are given renewed strength. The American soldiers don't know the full horror of the war they are entering, but they are full of patriotism and a desire to help their allies. Their numbers are overwhelming, and with them comes technology and modern tactics that will change the course of the war. The Allies' great offensive begins in 1918 with the help of fresh American troops. The British and the French launch a massive counterattack. This is no longer a battle of attrition. This is a decisive move, a last-ditch effort to break the Germans. The Allied forces push through the German lines with an intensity they have never had before. For the first time in years, they begin to make real gains. The Germans, who had once been confident in their victory, are now reeling. The strength of the United States, combined with the sheer determination of the French and British, is too much for the Central Powers. As the Allied forces march forward, there is a sense of hope, but also fear. Everyone knows this could be the end of the war, but no one knows how many more lives will be lost before it's over. The Germans fighting in trenches are pushed further and further back. Desperate, they continue to fight, but every step forward by the Allies feels like a step closer to the end of the war as the Allied forces advance. Something incredible happens. The Central Powers begin to collapse. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, one of the main members of the Central Powers, begins to disintegrate. Its soldiers are exhausted, its empire is crumbling, and it can no longer fight. In October 1918, Austria-Hungary surrenders to the Allies. This is a crucial moment because it means that the Central Powers are no longer united. Germany, the last remaining power, is now alone, facing a massive coalition of enemies. The Germans, too, begin to feel the pressure of the war. They have been fighting for so long, their supplies are running out, their soldiers are deserting, and their morale is at an all-time low. In November 1918, after months of fierce fighting, the German government asks for an armistice, a ceasefire. The war is finally over, the end of the war. The aftermath on November 11, 1918 at 11 a.m. The guns fall silent. The world holds its breath. The war is over. The armistice is signed, and for the first time in 4 long years, there is peace. The soldiers who have been fighting for so long now look at the battlefield around them, and they realize that the price of peace has been too high. The world is left in ruins. Millions are dead. Millions more are wounded. Entire families are torn apart. Cities lie in ruins. The world is scarred physically and emotionally. The suffering, the loss, and the pain are beyond comprehension. But even in the midst of the sorrow, there is a feeling of relief, a feeling of hope. The nightmare is finally over, and the soldiers can now go home. Though they will never truly be the same. They will carry the memories of the war with them forever, after 4 years of relentless fighting. The war left a mark on the earth so deep that its effects would echo for generations. 20 million people, 20 million lives were lost. The numbers themselves are almost incomprehensible. Imagine whole cities wiped out, entire families erased, all because of this war. The number of dead soldiers alone was staggering. 9 million soldiers from all sides lost their lives in the trenches, on the battlefield, and in air raids. The soldiers, brave men who had once been children full of hopes and dreams, became mere statistics. Numbers in a grim report. Men went to war, and some never even returned, leaving behind grieving wives, mothers, and children who would never feel their touch again. But it wasn't just the soldiers who paid the price. 10 million civilians, mothers, fathers, children. The elderly died as well. Entire villages were destroyed. Food supplies were cut off. Disease and hunger spread like wildfire, killing without mercy. The physical toll of the war was visible in the form of destroyed landscapes, homes burned to the ground, fields filled with craters, and cities reduced to rubble. But the emotional toll, that's something no number can ever fully capture. Imagine the despair and hopelessness people felt as they returned to their homes, only to find them gone. There were no more family dinners. The laughter of children was replaced with silence. The streets were empty, where once there were vibrant communities. Those who survived carried invisible scars, mental wounds that would never fully heal the trauma.